Adapted from archaic translation by H. T. Francis and R. A. Neil. Jataka number 426. Dīpi-Jātaka. How fares it with you, etc. The master told this tale while living in Jītavana monastery, concerning a certain she-goat. At one time the elder monk Moggallana lived in a living with one door, in a mountain enclosure, surrounded by hills. His covered walk was close by the door. Some goat herds thought the enclosure would be a good place for their goats, so they drove them in and lived there at their will. One day they came in the evening, took all the goats, and went away. But one she-goat had wandered far, and not seeing the goats departing, she was left behind. Later, as she was departing, a certain panther saw her, and thinking to eat her stood by the door of the enclosure. She looked all round, and saw the panther. He is there because he wishes to kill and eat me, she thought. If I turn and run, my life is lost. I must play the man, and so she tosses her horns, and sprang straight at him with all her might. She escaped his grip, though he was quivering with the thought of catching her. Then running at full speed she came up with the other goats. The elder monk observed how all the animals had behaved. Next day he went and told the Tathagata, "So, Lord, this she-goat performed a feat by her readiness in clever means, and escaped from the panther." The master answered, "Moggallana, the panther failed to catch her this time, but once before he killed her though she cried out, and ate her." Then at Moggallana's request, he told an old tale. Once upon a time the Bodhisattva was born in a certain village of the Magadha kingdom, in a wealthy family. When he grew up, he renounced desires and adopted the religious life, reaching the perfection of meditation. After living long in the Himalaya, he came to Rajraha city for salt and vinegar, and lived in a hut of leaves which he made in a mountain enclosure. Just as in the introductory story, the goat herds drove their goats there. And in the same way, one day as a single she-goat was going out later than the rest, a panther waited by the door, thinking to eat her. When she saw him, she thought, "My life is finished. By some means I must get him into pleasant and kindly talk, and so soften his heart and save my life." Beginning a friendly talk with him from some distance, she spoke the first stanza. How fares it with you, uncle? And is it well with you? My mother sends her kind regards. And I'm your friend so true. Hearing her, the panther thought, this baggage would distract me by calling me uncle. She does not know how hard I am. And so he spoke the second stanza. You've walked upon my tail, Miss Goat, and done me injury. And you think by saying uncle that you can go scot-free. When she heard him, she said, "Oh uncle, don't talk in that way," and spoke the third stanza. I faced you as I came, good sir, you face me as you sit. Your tail is all behind you. How could I walk on it? He answered, "What do you say, she-goat? Is there any place where my tail might not be?" And so he spoke the fourth stanza. As far as 4 great continents with seas and mountains spread, my tail extends. How could you fail on such a tail to walk? The she-goat, when she heard this, thought, this wicked one is not attracted by soft words. I will answer him as an enemy, and so she spoke the fifth stanza. Your villain's tail is long, I know, for I had warning fair. Parents and brothers told me so. But I flew through the air. Then he said, I know you came through the air. But as you came, you spoiled my food by your way of coming, and so he spoke the sixth stanza. The sight of you, Miss Goat, on high, the air in flying through, frightened a herd of deer. And so my food was spoiled by you. Hearing this, the goat in fear of death could bring no other excuse, but cried out, Uncle, do not commit such cruelty. Spare my life. But though she cried out, the other seized her by the shoulder, killed her and ate her. It was thus the she-goat cried for grace. But blood must satisfy the beast that grips her throat. The bad will show no courtesy. Conduct, nor right, nor courtesy, the bad man will display. He hates the good. To face him then it is best in open fight. These are two stanzas inspired by perfect wisdom. A holy ascetic saw the whole matter of the two animals. After this lesson, the master identified the birth. At that time the she-goat and the panther were the she-goat and the panther of today, the holy ascetic was myself. Book 9. NAVANIPATA. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by H. T. Francis and R. A. Neil. Jataka number 427. Gijjha-Jātaka. Formed of rough logs, etc. This story the master told at Mindriven monastery concerning a disobedient brother. He was, they say, of gentle birth, and though ordained in the teaching that leads to salvation, was admonished by his well-wishers, masters, teachers, and fellow students to this effect. Thus must you advance and thus retreat. Thus look at or away from objects. Thus must the arm be stretched out or drawn back. Thus are the inner and outer garment to be worn. Thus is the bowl to be held, and when you have received sufficient food to sustain life, after self-examination, thus are you to eat it, keeping guard over the door of the senses. In eating you are to be moderate and exercise watchfulness. You are to recognize such and such duties towards brethren who come to or go from the monastery. These are the 14 sets of monks' duties, and the 80 great duties to duly performed. These are the 13 Buddha practices. All these are to be scrupulously performed. Yet was he disobedient and impatient, and did not receive instruction respectfully, but refused to listen to them, saying, I do not find fault with you. Why do you speak thus to me? I shall know what is for my good, and what is not. Then the brethren, hearing of his disobedience, sat in the hall of truth, telling of his faults. The master came and asked them what it was they were discussing, and sent for the brother and said, Is it true, brother, that you are disobedient? And when he confessed that it was so, the master said, Why, brother, after being ordained in so excellent a teaching that leads to salvation, do you not listen to the voice of your well-wishers? Formerly too you disobeyed the voice of the wise, and were blown into atoms by the Varamba wind. And with this he told a story of the past. Once upon a time the Bodhisattva came to life as a young vulture on Vulture Mountain. Now his offspring Supata, the king of the vultures, was strong and had a following of many thousands of vultures, and he fed the parent birds. And owing to his strength he used to fly to a very great distance. So his father advised him and said, My son, you must not go beyond such and such a point. He said, Very good. But one day when it rained, he flew up with the other vultures, and leaving the rest behind, and going beyond the prescribed limit, he came within the range of the Varamba wind, and was blown into atoms. The master, in his perfect wisdom, to explain this incident, uttered these verses. Formed of rough logs, an ancient pathway led to dizzy heights, where a young vulture fed the parent birds. Lusty and strong of wing, he often to them would fat of serpents bring. And when his father saw him flying high, and venturing far to field, he thus would cry, My son, when you can scan from your lookout Earth's rounded sphere by ocean surrounded about, no farther go, but straight return, I request. Then would this king of birds speed on his way, and bending over the earth, with piercing sight, he viewed below forest and mountain height, and earth would, as his sire described, appear amid the encircling sea-arounded sphere. But when beyond these limits he had passed, strong bird though he might be, a raging blast swept him away to an untimely death, powerless to cope with storm wind's fiery breath. Thus did the bird by disobedience prove fatal to those dependent on his love. So perish all that contemptful of old age deride the warnings uttered by the sage. As the young vulture wisdom's voice defied, and contempt the limits set to bound his pride. Therefore, brother, be not like unto this vulture, but do the asking of your well-wishers. And being thus advised by the master, he from then on became obedient. The master, his lesson ended, identified the birth. The disobedient vulture of those days is now the disobedient brother. The parent vulture was myself. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by H. T. Francis and R. A. Neil. Jataka number 428. Kosambī-Jātaka. Whenever the Brotherhood, etc. This story the master, while living in the Gijjha park near Kosambī, told concerning certain quarrelsome folk at Kosambī. The incident that led to the story is to be found in the section of the Vinaya relating to Kosambī. Here is a short summary of it. At that time, it is said, two brothers lived in the same house, the one versed in the Vinaya, the other in the sutras. The latter of these one day having occasion to visit the lavatory went out leaving the surplus water for rinsing the mouth in a vessel. Afterwards the one versed in the Vinaya went in and seeing the water came out and asked his companion if the water had been left there by him. He answered, "Yes, sir." "What? Do you not know that this is sinful?" "No, I was not aware of it." "Well, brother, it is sinful. Then I will atone for it. But if you did it inadvertently and regardlessly, it is not sinful." So he became as one who saw no sin in what was sinful. The Vinaya scholar said to his pupils, "This sutra scholar, though falling into sin, is not aware of it." They on seeing the other brother's pupils said, "Your master though falling into sin does not recognize its sinfulness." They went and told their master. He said, "This Vinaya scholar before said it was no sin, and now says it is a sin. He is a liar." They went and told the others, "Your master is a liar." Thus they stirred up a quarrel, one with another. Then the Vinaya scholar, finding an opportunity, went through the form of excommunication of the brother for refusing to see his offence. From then on even the laymen who provided necessities for the monks were divided into two factions. The sisters too that accepted their advices. And guardian gods. With their friends and intimates and deities from those that rest in space to those of the Brahma world. Even all such as were unconverted, formed two parties, and the uproar reached to the dwelling of the sublime gods. Then a certain brother came near to the Tathagata, and announced the view of the excommunicating party who said, "The man is excommunicated in orthodox form." And the view of the followers of the excommunicated one, who said, "He is illegally excommunicated," and the practice of those who though forbidden by the excommunicating party, still gathered round in support of him. The Lord Buddha said, "There is a split. Yes. A division in the Brotherhood." And he went to them and pointed out the misery involved in excommunication to those that excommunicated, and the misery following upon the concealment of sin to the opposite party, and so departed. Again when they were holding the Aposatha and similar services in the same place, within the boundary, and were quarrelling in the room for meals and elsewhere, he laid down the rule that they were to sit down together, one by one from each side alternately. And hearing that they were still quarrelling in the monastery he went there and said, "Enough, brothers, let us have no quarrelling." And one of the wrong side, not wishing to annoy the Lord Buddha, said, "Let the blessed Lord of Truth stay at home. Let the Lord Buddha dwell quietly at ease, enjoying the bliss he has already obtained in this life. We shall make ourselves notorious by this quarrelling, altercation, disputing and contention." But the master said to them, "Once upon a time, brethren, Brahmadatta reigned as king of Kasi in Benares. And he robbed Dīpi-Jātaka, king of Kosala, of his kingdom, and put him to death, when living in disguise, and when Prince Tinghvahoabinh spared the life of Brahmadatta, they became from then on close friends. And since such must have been the long-suffering and tenderness of these sceptred and sword-bearing kings, truly, brethren, you should make it clear that you too, having embraced the religious life according to so well taught a teaching and discipline, can be forgiving and tender-hearted." And thus admonishing them for the third time he said, "Enough, brothers, let there be no quarrelling." And when he saw that they did not cease at his asking, he went away, saying, "Truly, these foolish folk are like men possessed, they are not easy of persuasion. Next day, returning from the collection of alms, he rested for some time in his perfumed chamber, and put his room in order, and then taking his bowl and robe he stood poised in the air and delivered these verses in the midst of the assembly. Whenever the brotherhood in two is ripped, the common folk to loud-mouthed cries give unleash. Each one believes that he himself is wise, and views his neighbour with hateful eyes. Bewildered souls, puffed up with self-esteem, with open mouth they foolishly blaspheme, and as through all the range of speech they stray, they know not whom as leader to obey. This man abused me, that struck me a blow. A third overcame and robbed me long ago. All such as harbour feelings of this kind, to mitigate their anger are never inclined. He did abuse and buffet me of past. He overcame me and oppressed me to pain. They who such thoughts refuse to entertain, appease their anger and live at one again. Not hate, but love alone makes hate to cease. This is the everlasting righteous path of peace. Some men the righteous path of self-restraint despise, but who make up their quarrels, they are wise. If men all scarred with wounds in deadly conflict, reavers and robbers, taking human life, know those that plunder a whole realm, may be friends with their rivals, should brethren not agree? Should you a wise and honest comrade find, a familiar soul, to dwell with you inclined, all dangers past, with him you still would stray, in happy contemplation all the day. But should you fail to meet with such a friend, your life it was best in solitude to spend, like to some prince that abdicates a throne, or elephant that ranges all alone. For choice adopt the solitary life. Companionship with fools but leads to conflict. In careless innocence pursue your way, like elephant in forest wild astray. When the master had thus spoken, as he failed to reconcile these brethren, he went to Balakalakaragama, and gave discourse to the venerable Bhagu of the blessings of solitude. From there he went to the dwelling of three youths of gentle birth and spoke to them of the bliss to be found in the sweets of harmony. From there he journeyed to the Paraliyaka forest, and after living there 3 months, without returning to Kosambī, he went straight to Sravasthi city. And the lay folk of Kosambī consulted together and said, "Surely these reverend brothers of Kosambī have done us much harm. Worried by them the Lord Buddha is gone away. We will neither offer salutation nor other marks of respect to them, nor give alms to them when they visit us. So they will depart, or return to the world, or will propitiate the Lord Buddha." And they did so. And these brethren, overwhelmed by this form of punishment, went to Sravasthi city and begged forgiveness of the Lord Buddha. The master thus identified the birth. The father was the great King Shuddhodana, the mother was Mahamaya, Prince Dinghavayu was myself.